For those who are unfamiliar, this is Pastor Andrew Wommack. He's a televangelist. He's close friends with Kenneth Copeland. He actually has a show on Kenneth Copeland's TV network, the Victory Network. This is actually part 2. If you haven't seen part 1, don't sweat it. This stands independently of the rest. But in the previous part, he talked about prosperity gospel, people giving their last penny, giving everything that they own to him, and how he doesn't need this money. He has plenty of money. It's you giving to God, not you giving to Andrew Wommack. And it's like a moral imperative. You absolutely must give to quote-unquote God, when in reality the money's going into his coffers. It was the most predatory shit I've ever seen in my life, probably. I played this like yesterday when I watched this, but let me just play like one short clip from Wommack so that you have an idea of who we're dealing with here. This one is from mid-January 2022.
I tell you, partnership in the gospel is the greatest thing you can do. When we get to heaven, I can guarantee you there's not a single one of you that's going to be saying, I wish you hadn't have encouraged me to give so much and that I'd have got my 5th flat screen TV and that I would have had more jewels and fancier clothes and a nicer car. All that stuff will be gone. It's only what you invest in the kingdom that is going to benefit you for eternity.
And what he means when he says invest in the kingdom is invest in his ministry.
You're going to come up to me and hug my neck and kiss me and say, thank you, thank you, thank you for getting that money out of my pocket.
Yeah, this guy is deeply predatory, always has been predatory, and everybody that he's affiliated with is predatory too, like Kenneth Copeland, for example. I don't know if you guys have been following this, but I've been reading Kenneth Copeland's book that he wrote all the way back in like 1974, and the book is about prosperity gospel. He frames it up like it's a law of the universe, like, you know, gravity or any other thing, like any fundamental force of the universe. The fundamental force works like this. If you give money to God, aka Kenneth Copeland, then God will send the money back to you 100-fold. All you have to do is get $100, give it to Kenneth Copeland, and you'll end up with 1,000 or even 10,000. Just like that. And if this hasn't worked for you in the past, it's because you didn't give it to Kenneth Copeland. You gave it to some other preacher. I'm dead serious. That's the idea. And Andrew Wommack spreads the same ideas. Let's keep listening here.
So I just say this as way of introduction, that some of you think, man, you're talking about something that happened, you know, back when the children of Israel came out of the land of Egypt. What does that have to do with me? Everything. Everything that these people went through is exactly what you and I are going through. And I tell you, I'm going to...
No, it isn't. That's ridiculous. This is so completely divorced from everything we experience as human beings on a daily basis today that they might as well be different species of mammal. Like, this is completely unrelated. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have, you know, public schools, did they? They didn't have public transportation. They didn't have anything that we have today. They were practically living in caves at the time. Now, it's a fascinating glimpse into that culture at the time, but this is completely fabricated. They had absolutely no connection to us 6,000 years ago, okay? No connection.
Make application, and if you can understand this, I think this will really, really bless you. So let's turn over to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 2, and let me just explain, if you aren't familiar with this, that the whole book of Deuteronomy is written by Moses recapping what they've been through in...
Okay, Moses wasn't a real person. I just want to put that on record. There are a bunch of events described in the Bible about Moses, you know, being a famous person, being connected to like the royal family there and stuff like that, when in reality there is no evidence that Moses ever existed at any point, and there should be evidence of that. What's more, Deuteronomy, supposedly written by Moses, describes Moses' death. The next book was supposed to be written by Moses also, like after Moses already died. Moses was not a real person, okay? He was fake.
40 years in the wilderness. And he is rehearsing this. It doesn't say exactly what period of time this is, but this could be written in one day or maybe 2 or 3 days, probably not more than a week. He is just rehearsing what has happened to the entire nation.
Okay, let me just show you guys something real quick, all right? Since we're talking about, 40 days or 40 years wandering in the wilderness for 40 years, let me just pull something up for you real fast. And let's talk about that. This is Manhattan, by the by. I mean, this isn't related to what's happening right now, but, I'm in this area of New York City, so I wanted to show it to you guys. We got downtown, we've got Midtown here with the Empire State Building. This is Times Square area. 42nd Street is Times Square. St. Patrick's Cathedral right here. Beautiful. Beautiful cathedral, honestly. Incredible. Then we got the Upper West Side, the Upper East Side, and then we have Harlem. This is, up here is, what do you call it? Wait, where is it? Oh, yeah. Up here is Washington Heights. I believe this is where George Washington retired to, Washington Heights. I could be wrong on that. Then there's where Hamilton Heights. Yeah, this is where Alexander Hamilton retired to. He purchased this area in Manhattan to, live there when he retired. Of course, he ended up dying thanks to Aaron Burr, but that's not what we're here to talk about. Let's look up Egypt, okay? Directions from Egypt to Israel. Walking. Wow, you can't get directions from Egypt to Israel. Okay, here, look. It's just right here. We've got this is the walk right here from Israel to Egypt or vice versa. It's a tiny little stretch. Now look at all of Africa, okay? How far would they have had to have walked to make a 40-year journey? They would have had to have walked all the way around the whole of Africa probably to do a 40-year journey and then back to Israel. That's absurd, okay? They would look, if they were in if they were in Egypt, there is a single land bridge that connects Israel to Egypt. They couldn't have possibly walked for 40 years unless they didn't cross that land bridge. So what they would have done, I mean, the story is absurd on every level, okay? They didn't wander in the wilderness for 40 years. It would have taken, Falcone says it would have taken 154 hours to walk from Cairo to Tel Aviv, Israel. So that's like a week of walking straight. If they did 8 hours a day, it would have been 20 days. 20 days, okay? That's how long it would have taken if they did 8 hours a day. So you're telling me they started in Egypt and they went left instead of right? And walked all the way around the continent of Africa and then right back to the exact spot that they started at? They would have had to have ended up at this exact spot to cross over this little land bridge here. It's an absurd story from top to bottom. They did not wander around the wilderness for 40 years. There is no evidence of it. We don't see a piece of clothing. We don't see a sandal. We don't see a chariot wheel. We don't see a turban, nothing, anywhere. This didn't happen. Moses was not a real person, okay? This is fake. It's a fake story. Now, if you want to derive some moral meaning from it, I don't know what the hell you would derive from it, but if you want to, okay, great. That's fine with me. But this is fake. You cannot believe this in all seriousness. It's garbage. If it really happened, someone was deliberately deceiving people by walking in circles or crisscrossing the continent to solidify their faith or some other bull. Lol. Yeah. People didn't live that long back then. People lived, well, the average lifespan back then was like 40-something years old, but that's a little deceptive. People generally, if they made it to 20 years old, they'd probably make it to 65. The average age was a little bit higher than that in reality. I guess the median age was probably a little higher than that. But they didn't have 40 years to walk in the wilderness, okay? They didn't have the 80, 85 years we have in America today. They didn't have the same opportunities that we have today. They didn't have penicillin. They didn't last, 65, give or take 4 years, right? So they would survive. If they made it to 20, they'd probably make it to 60 to 70, give or take. They didn't have all the modern medicine that we have today. You're trying to tell me they wandered around the entire continent of Africa for 40 years that they didn't even have to blow? They had children on this trek that they went on? Like, come on. The whole story is fake. You must see that, right?
One day, or maybe 2 or 3 days, probably not more than a week, he is just rehearsing what has happened to the entire nation. And he's giving them warnings and telling them what they should do. And then over in the 34th chapter, 32nd through the 34th chapter is where he wrote a song at the end of his life, taught it to them. And then in the 34th chapter is when Moses died and God took him. And so this is...
And the book was written by Moses. The book that he's describing, it was written by Moses. This book that describes Moses' death was written by Moses. I'm dead serious. Are people really believing this right now? Are people buying this?
It's just really 1 day or 2 days worth of him speaking, and he's rehearsing things. And boy, it's really powerful to see it all condensed and in hindsight. You know, lots of times in hindsight, you see things better than you do when you're going through it. So he's going back and rehearsing what happened, and there's some great lessons to learn here. So here he is talking to the children of Israel and giving them instructions about what to do after he dies and how they should go in and possess the land. And so let's go down to Deuteronomy chapter 2, and in verse 24, he says, "Rise ye up, take your journey, and pass over the river Arnon. Behold, I have given into thy hand Sihon the Amorite, king of Heshbon, and his land. Begin to possess it, and contend with him in battle." And out of this, the Lord gave me 7 things. I was just thinking about this, and this is powerful. And so I'm praying that you would open up your heart and that you get the same benefit out of this that I did.
This is going to be some predatory shit, isn't it?
And so I'm going to be ministering 4 times over this weekend, and I'm going to cover 7 different things. And so I won't get them all done tonight. But let me just tell you what they are, and then I'll go back and expand on each one of these. The very first thing...
God, did you guys see me throw that turtle shell just now? I was trying to get the coin, and I threw it at the wall, and it bounced back and hit me. I feel like somebody that throws a basketball at a wall, and it comes back and hits me in the face. I feel like that's what happened to me just now.
The thing he told him to do was to rise up. That's really important. I'm going to be talking about that tonight. The second thing, take your journey. That's really important. I'm going to talk about those 2 things tonight. And pass over the river Arnon. That's the third thing. The fourth thing is behold. That's really important. I'm going to be talking about imagination there. And then he says, I have given into thy hand Sihon the Amorite. Not I'm going to, but it was already done. I'm going to be talking about how you got to see that you've already got it in Christ. And then he said, begin to possess it. And this is something that most people don't understand. They are looking for just, to cover from where they are to where God wants them to be all in 1 step or in 1 second or something like that. But the Christian life has growth in it. And there's a lot of people that fight against this, and because of it, they are hurting themselves and stopping their own miracle. They are just looking for something to happen instantly like that, and that is not how God moves. He can move that way, but that is the exception rather than the rule, and this is why so many people miss it. And then the last thing here.
So what I'm picking up from him right now is that he doesn't want you to think that if you give him your last penny, everything you have, he doesn't want you to think that you're going to instantly get more money. He wants you to realize that it's very possible, in fact likely, that you aren't going to get any more money anytime soon, that you just have to wait and see what happens, i.e., God's not coming. He's not coming to solve this problem. You just gave me your last dime, and I understand that's all you had, but that's just what it is.
Here, the seventh thing is you have to contend with him in battle. And most Christians are not willing to get involved in the fight. They're looking for the easiest way out, and they're not standing and doing things. So I'm going to be talking about these 7 things, and I tell you, this really blessed me, and I, like I said, wrote this whole little booklet on that. So first of all, he said, rise up. You've got to remember that the children of Israel, these people that he was speaking to, all of them, all of the men of war had died in the wilderness. This is 39 years, just under 40 years, and all of the men of war had died. So all of the people that he was speaking to, unless they were old women or unless they were children that were under the age of 20 when the spies came back and brought the evil report and they refused to go into the promised land, there's just very few people there that had seen what it was like before they lived in the wilderness. The rest of them were born in the wilderness.
It's completely made up. This didn't happen. The rest of them were not born in the wilderness. No one was born in the wilderness. This is fake, okay? They didn't wander through the wilderness for 40 years. Wow, I shouldn't have touched it. That's my mistake. I'm just not going to move. I'm just going to let it play out. This is an auto level. I'm just going to set the controller down and let it go. God says, it's not the thing that goes into the mouth that's bad, but what comes out of it. Therefore, it's okay to be gay. That's a fair point. You know, that sounds like an absurd argument, but Christians use that argument all the time. Or not that argument, but that type of argument. Like that style of argumentation, that type of logic. It's used all the time. I mean, it's a stretch. Yeah, sure, it's a stretch. This is super common in Christianity to stretch things to this degree. So yeah, I think that's fair.
These people had never known anything but living in the wilderness. They had eaten manna. And you know what? I've learned this, that most people take the way that they are born, what they grow up with, as being normal.
Yeah, how about that? Weird, huh? And matter of fact, didn't this guy just earlier say something to the effect of, when I was little, I believed them, and I still believe them to this day? Didn't he say something like that? Strange, huh? Strange how that works.
As being, this is the way it's supposed to be. You know, I had a man one time that when Jamie and I were pastoring in Childress, Texas, it's a long story, but he and his wife had lived in a nudist colony for 3.5 years. And
I'm sorry?
They had a 2-year-old girl, and we met them.
Dude, okay, I'm not really convinced you should have a kid at a nudist colony. Is that even real? Is he just making this shit up? I get the impression he's just making this shit up. I think there's a strong possibility this is completely fabricated.
At a park and got them born again, and they came to church, and it was a glorious salvation. Good things happened, but this guy was a pain and a half. He criticized everybody and sowed discord. And he came to me one time, I'm leaving this place because there's nothing but strife in this church. And I said, you know what? There is strife in this church, and you're the source of it. I said, we didn't have problems before you came. And it was news to him. He just always thought it was everybody else that was the problem. And I began to tell him, I said, all you've done is just criticize and sow strife. And to my surprise, this guy had a temper, and I kind of expected him to get mad. But you know what? Instead, he got tears in his eyes, and he said, I don't know what it's like to be normal. And he shared.
No, totally. I bet. I don't know what it's like to be normal. I mean, I've said something similar because I can very clearly see that the outside world, outside of Jehovah's Witnesses, is very different than what I experienced, right? But this guy apparently just likes starting drama.
That he was the first person in the history of California that was indicted by the grand jury 3 times before he was a teenager. And he lived in reformatories his whole life. And he says, if you were telling me to act healed when I feel sick, I could do it because I felt well before. But you're telling me to walk in love. I don't even know what love is. I don't know.
Is this even real? This sounds super far-fetched, right?
What normal is. And you know, it shocked me to think that somebody grew up like that. But brothers and sisters, there's people right here that your normal is not a biblical normal. And even your religious normal is not a biblical normal. And we have grown up in a wilderness and we don't know what we're missing. Did you know these people, they had a cloud that shadowed them during the day that kept the heat from burning them up in the desert. So they had a cloud.
This is fabricated. This never happened, okay? He says they had a cloud that prevented the sun from burning them up in the desert. They were never in the desert, okay? This didn't happen. Moses was not a real person. This is fake.
That basically gave them air conditioning in the day. And at night, they had a fire that warmed them in the desert. Plus, they had manna every single day. Do you know that the people that...
No, they did not. Manna isn't real. This story isn't real. This is all made up.
Moses was speaking to had never, ever gone out and planted crops, had done things like that. They lived off manna for 40 years.
No, they didn't.
They went out and just gathered manna. They had their food provided. All they had to do was just pick it up. And I can guarantee you, over in the 5th chapter of the book of Joshua, it says that they went into the promised land. They crossed the Jordan River. And it says they ate of the old corn of the land, talking about in the promised land, and the manna ceased.
Okay, so they passed over the Jordan River? Is that what he said? So when they passed over the Jordan River, the manna ceased, is what he's saying here, okay? So hang on one second here. The Jordan River is right in the middle of all of this. So is he trying to tell me that it took them 40 years to go from here, say Cairo area, right? Cairo is a major city in Egypt. From here to here, Jordan River? 40 years? Really? Walking? It should take you no more than a week to walk there. All right. If you're doing 8 hours a day, it should take you no more than a month to walk from one to the other. Not 40 years, okay? 1 month, not 480 months. It's absurd. It's an absurd story. They walk, and how did they end up at the Jordan River? He says once they crossed the Jordan River, they had food and blah, blah, blah. Jordan River is on the other side of Israel from where they were walking. They entered Israel like a week before. I don't understand. This is so ridiculously made up, I can't believe anybody believes it. They must just not, look into this at all to any degree. They must just read the words on the page and assume that it's all truth, whether it's factual or not. It's honestly absurd.
I can just guarantee you, because I deal with a lot of people, that there was a lot of those Jews that said, man, I'm not going to start planting crops. I'm not going to go out and till the ground and move rocks and work and do all of this stuff. God has supernaturally supplied for me for 40 years, and they were going to live by miracles.
He's saying that he doesn't know that there was anybody in the group that said this, but he's assuming it. Why would you make an assumption like that? That is, as far as I can tell, that's not a fair assumption to make. These are supposed to be the holiest of holy people, right? Aren't they supposed to be super ultra thankful for what God provided to them or whatever?
They weren't going to sit there and work. I just know that that's the way it is.
Okay, well, you have no reason to think that. These people are supposed to be God's chosen people who just suffered terribly for their God, right? There is no reason to believe any of that. In fact, it's contrary to the theology provided here.
I've dealt with a lot of people. And these people had been in the wilderness for 40 years. Most of them didn't know what they were missing. And the Lord was telling Moses, you've got to get these people to rise up. Did you know before you can see victory in your life, you got to get sick and tired of things the way that they are. And these people, I can guarantee you, many of them had adjusted to wilderness living, and they just thought that this was natural. And Moses was telling them, you've got to rise up. You've got to get sick and tired. You've got to desire something different. And I'm
like this whole he is editorializing, I think is the term. Writing a narrative about how things went, but he has no idea. He has no reason to believe any of this. He has no clue how this went.
I'm saying this to you. This is one of the lessons to learn from this, that you know what? As long as you can stand things being the way they are, they'll stay that way. A holy dissatisfaction is one of the greatest things in your life. It's just like, you know, a mother bird or something, they will start taking all of the feathers and the padding out of a nest so that it starts prodding those chicks to get out and to do something. But if you make the nest too comfortable, they don't ever want to leave.
Is that even true? I've never heard that before.
And there's a lot of people that honestly, you have just adjusted. I'm not saying this to be critical. I'm trying to stir us up. But you know, most of us have grown up without seeing miracles. I had a guy come to me this week in Bible college, and he says, man, I've heard you talk about it, but I've never seen a miracle. When am I going to see a miracle?
Right, exactly. Show me a miracle. It doesn't even have to be a miracle for me. Show me a miracle for you that you experienced because God loves you or whatever. Show it to me. Let's see it. I'll take anything.
And so I just asked him, I said, how long have you been really seeking God? And he says, well, a little less than a month. And I said, give it some time, amen. I said,
Why should I give it time? Isn't this like a fundamental force of the universe or whatever? Isn't God capable of doing absolutely anything and showing me anything? Isn't he all powerful? I don't understand. Why am I waiting?
I showed him, I said, right here, we saw a little baby raised from the dead, right here on this spot. And I said, we've seen blind eyes open and deaf ears open. I said, just give it a little bit of time, you'll see it. But man,
that's all I need. Show me. He says, we've seen blind people see again. This is something that's testable, provable. We can try this out. Let's do it. I don't understand. What's the problem? All you have to do is show it to one single person. One person. And suddenly, you've got a believer just like that. Do it in front of a camera. Get them in front of scientists to test them before and after. And you got a believer. Suddenly, the entire world is Christian. The whole world.
Man, that's a great attitude. He was wanting to see something. But you know, most people have adjusted. Again, I'm saying this in love, but there are many of you that you have ailments, you have aches and pains, you've got some things that are hereditary, you've got some things that are seasonal, and you've embraced it as just normal. You're over 40, they give you black balloons.
Okay, I've never heard that before, but okay.
And Depends for your 40th birthday.
I think that's just a joke. I don't think they do that, generally.
And you make jokes about, and some of you have just accepted this. This is not the way God intended you to live. Did you know Moses, it says in Deuteronomy 34, I believe it's verse 7, that he was 120 years old and
Moses was not a real person, nor was he 120 years old.
His natural force was not abated, nor his eyesight dim. And he lived under an inferior covenant. 2 Corinthians chapter 3 talks about Moses specifically and how he had the glory of God on him so that his face even shone. But it says that we are looking without a veil over us, and we are looking full in the face of God, and we're changed from glory to glory. That doesn't mean that it's just gradual, you improve. It means you're changed from the Old Testament glory, which was inferior, to the New Testament glory. What we have is better than what Moses had. If Moses could live to be 120 years old without his natural force abated, he climbed a mountain the day that he died. And it says his eyesight wasn't dim. Now see, as I begin to talk about this, there's some of you already upset with me. because you're saying, you're condemning me. You're saying that I shouldn't be wearing glasses, or I should be strong, or I should.
Yeah, totally. That's basically what he's saying right now. He's about to address that criticism. But what he's really saying is that if you're holy enough, if you and God have a strong enough relationship with each other, you won't need glasses. You won't need money. This is Kenneth Copeland's belief that he preached. This is prosperity gospel. This guy believes it too. Copeland just talks about it constantly is all. You won't need any of this stuff because God will make you see. God will give you money. God will blah, 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 whatever. It's all complete nonsense, all of it, and it's wrong. It's wrong that he spreads this idea around and people actually believe it.
Should be able to. I'm not condemning anybody, but I'm saying this is what's available to us. You know, Carrie down here, she'll be coming up sometime during this week, and we'll be hearing from her, but she's training for a marathon. That's a 26.2 mile race. And did you know every one of us have the potential of running a marathon, but not today. You have to train for it. And so if Carrie was to come up and start talking about running a marathon and doing things, there's somebody, well, she's condemning me because I don't. Well, nobody's condemning you. You can stay a couch potato if you want to. Nobody's condemning you. You can sit.
There it is. That's what he's saying. So a minute ago, he said people feel like he's condemning them personally because they wear glasses. They don't love God enough. If they loved God enough, they wouldn't need glasses. If they loved God enough, they would be rich. That's what he's saying here. And he's saying no one's condemning you for not running a marathon. If you don't want to run a marathon, then or if you don't want to train, then you can't run the marathon. That's what he's saying.
Sit there and refuse to do anything. It's your choice, but you do have the potential. Every one of us were made so that we could do something like that. It's just a matter. Are you willing to put in the effort? Are you willing to train? Are you willing to deny yourself and get up early and do some things?
Are you willing to get in good with God? Are you willing to do what God wants you to do, which is wreck your entire life, destroy everything in your life, every relationship that you have, to build a relationship with God, supposedly, or because this preacher tells you to, and tells you that by doing so you will build a relationship with God. That's basically what's being said here.
We say what is available to us. I'm not condemning anybody who's not living this way, but I am saying that you ought to raise your standard and go to believing for something more. The first step to walking in victory is to get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And to
This is just wrong, dude.
quit settling for less. And so many people are shooting at nothing and hitting it every single time. There are many people that honestly, your vision it doesn't even need God to accomplish your vision. Most of you shoot for things that you could do on your own if people just don't hinder you and get out of your way, and if nothing really bad happens. I tell you what, when God calls you, He's going to call you to something that is bigger than you. I often tell our students, I said, if you can tell if what you're doing is God's vision or not, because if it's God, it'll be absolutely impossible. He will call you to do something that is a weakness of yours. Like me, I was an introvert. I couldn't even look at a person in the face. I couldn't talk to a person if I didn't already know them. I couldn't look them in the face. I wouldn't even be able to talk. And God has me speaking to millions and billions of people.
Billions of people, you say? God has you speaking to billions of people? There are only a total of 8 billion people on planet Earth, so I think billions might be a little bit of an overstatement, but sure, I'll take millions, I suppose. Don't you love how in this game the little clouds have snorkels and, not snorkels, but like goggles, little goggles, itty-bitty goggles? I think that's funny.
I'll call you to do something that is beyond yourself so it will make you trust in Him. He doesn't call you to do what you're comfortable with. He will call you to do something that is uncomfortable. And yet the average person just looks at their assets, their resources, and think,
oh, here we go. He's about to try to pry money out of him, right?
what can I do? What do I have the money to do? What do I feel comfortable? And you're like water. You take the easiest route. You go to the lowest level. I'm not saying this to criticize anybody, but I'm saying God made us for something more than what most of us have ever imagined.
So if you, this is the theology right here. If you loved God enough, if you were a good enough Christian, you would be as rich as me. The fact that I am rich, the fact that I don't wear glasses, the fact that I am walking around under my own power and don't need a wheelchair or anything, is evidence that I am a good Christian. And if you are in a wheelchair, it is evidence that you are a bad Christian. That's his belief system. It's disgusting. How is it that he hasn't driven every audience member away already? Absurd.
The sad
People will believe anything.
fact is, we've lived in the wilderness for so long, for 40 years, we become accustomed to it, and most people are, you don't like everything that's going on, but you look around and everybody else is as miserable as you are, and they aren't having any more success than you are, and you just learn to adjust. Did you know a holy dissatisfaction is a really good thing? You know what I believe midlife crisis is? It hits somewhere around 40, and people, when you're real young, you just are goofing off. You're just thinking about fun.
Okay.
And you are.
I wasn't thinking about fun when I was a kid. You know what I was thinking about? Surviving. I didn't have a penny to my fucking name, and I had nowhere to live, nowhere to sleep, nowhere to nothing. I had no choice but to fight for everything that I had. That wasn't a fun time between the ages of 18 to 30, so not everybody's having fun at that age.
Aren't really paying attention. And when you hit 40, you go to thinking, I'm at least halfway through this thing. What have I done with my life? Where am I going? And all of a sudden, you start evaluating and sizing things up, and it gets depressing because you have wasted half of your life. And they call it a midlife crisis and want to blame it on hormones or something. What it is, it's usually when reality.
Okay, I don't know what causes a midlife crisis, but I've heard of it. It's weird that he says that they want to blame it on hormones or something, right? Is that weird to anybody else that he would say something like that? Really strange to me. Is this something scientists have studied already and determined that, like, this is actually the result of hormones and stuff?
Reality begins to sink in, and you recognize, what have I done with my life? And you begin to start being discouraged.
Well, for what it's worth, you're not really halfway through by 40. It seems like you're halfway through, but the first, say, 12 years of your life, you weren't conscious, really. And the first 18 years of your life, you were just figuring things out. You knew basically nothing, right? You were just a baby at that point. Sorry to all the 18-year-olds out there. You're just a baby currently. I consider myself to be, I'm 33 right now. I consider myself to be a 13-year-old adult or a 15-year-old adult. Yeah, because say you become an adult at 18. I've only been really aware and alive and living my life for 15 years, all things considered. So, I'm 33 right now, so I have another, 50 years or something, right? And I've only been around for 15 years, really. That's kind of how I view it. I'm 59 and about 30 mentally. Yeah, that's something I've noticed. You don't age up mentally, really. Like, I'm still that same 18-year-old that I always was. I feel like I'm the same age that I've always been. When I was 12, I felt like I was 18, there is no, like, your brain doesn't really change. I mean, your personality changes as you get older, typically, of course. Teenagers are a little more aggressive and angry and hormonal to some degree. So your personality changes a little bit, but you don't really feel any different. You feel exactly the same age you've always been. And it's really weird to see other people like treating you differently because of your age when you feel exactly the same.
Did you know, I think that thought about, is this all there is to life? Yeah. Is this all that there is? You just get up and go to work, come home, watch television, go to bed, get up and go to work?
Dude, this guy has no idea what that's like. He has no idea how it feels to get up and go to work and then blah, 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 over and over and over again. The long march, as American Dad calls it. Get up, go to work, come home, go to bed, get up, go to work, over and over and over and over again for the rest of your life. Well, I don't know. I think this guy used to be not destitute, but not filthy rich. I think he started out not filthy rich, and then eventually built a ministry that, brought in a ton of money. So maybe he does know the long march. It's pretty miserable. It can be very miserable. When you go to work, time zips right by. It's like you just you entered like a time portal and lost those 8 hours, and they're just gone forever now. It's bizarre. So it makes sense that people feel like everything just flies right by and then it's all over. For me, I enjoy the hell out of my job. I love doing my job, but time does still slip right by for me. It isn't like, just because I enjoy my job a great deal doesn't mean that it doesn't slip right by really quickly.
On Mondays, you sing about Blue Monday because you don't like your job. You're going just because you got to have a paycheck. On Friday, it's all TGIF. And you can't wait to get off.
That's what she said.
I tell you, if that's describing you, you're wasting your life.
No, they're not wasting it. They are providing for themselves and their friends and their family members so that everybody around them can live a decent life, right? This isn't a waste. It's not a waste to work your nuts off doing something you fucking hate to help the people around you, in my opinion. This is the difference between, say, me and Andrew Tate, for example. Andrew Tate is looking for the quickest, shortest route to helping Andrew Tate. I look for the quickest, shortest route to helping the people around me. That's, in my opinion, that's what a good person does. Somebody who has morals and ethics and values and virtues wants to help the people around them, not themselves. That's how it seems to me anyways. And for them, I will work my nuts off. To make them happy, to help them out, to give them a good life, I will burn mine up. That's what it's all about for me. But I don't know. That's just me.
This is not a dress rehearsal.
Wait, it's not? I thought it was in his eyes because God is going to take him to heaven soon, right? I thought this is a dress rehearsal. Is it not? I thought you're this is a test, right? And then you go to heaven?
Real deal. If you don't wake up with some degree of excitement about God, thank you for what you've shown me, and that you are excited and you're believing for things. If you don't have a goal or something in front of you that is still beyond you, if you've already obtained all of your goals and you're just wasting time, man, that's a miserable place to be.
It's miserable, but it can be, absolutely, without a doubt. But if you have a goal in mind, if you're doing something for somebody or to, better yourself or the people around you, or to make somebody else happy, or to look forward to a fun event that you get to do or something like that, it's worth it. Yeah, it is hard. Absolutely. It's hard to feel like you're wasting your life sometimes, but you're just there to get a paycheck and save that paycheck up so that you can do fun things with friends and family and take care of the people around you. It seems to me.
Most people's idea is to work and retire so you can do what you really want to do.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that. Enjoy life now. Enjoy life while you've got it. Don't worry about retirement. You'll figure it out when you get there, in my opinion.
I tell you, you're missing God.
You're missing God. What? What does God have to do with this equation?
Missing God, if that's the way you're thinking. Billy Epperhart down here, our CEO, he became a millionaire through real estate and things like this, and so he retired early, and his wife, Becky, came in, and she said she's going to kill him if he didn't get up off that couch. Because it was killing her, and it was killing him, and he had all of this potential and doing nothing with it, and that's about the time that we called him, and he came to work for us, and everything in his life has worked up to this point.
Yeah, dude's rich. He can do anything he wants now. Of course he's going to spend all of his time and money and effort doing whatever he wants, which is, you know, Jesus-related activities. Like, not everybody has that option. Dude, are you kidding me? I just played through this entire level for it to kill me. I hate this level.
And helping him accomplish the things that we're doing. But I tell you, you shouldn't be looking forward to a time where you goof off and do nothing.
By the by, nobody is ever too old for grad school, okay? I see a conversation happening in the chat or whatever. No one is ever too old for grad school. Do you know how long grad school takes? Depending on the grad school you go to, 3 or 4 years. Hell, it could take 2 years, depending on, like, which thing you do. You know, even if you're 75, I knew a 75-year-old dude who went to grad school. Took him 2 years, or maybe it took him 4 years, I don't remember. When he got out, he bettered his community. He was a doctor that prescribed Suboxone to people in the community, which improved the conditions of the community because, you know, it was ravaged with drug abuse. And, you know, he helped the people around him. You are never, never too old for grad school. Till the moment you have 1 foot in the grave and 1 on a banana peel, you're not too old for grad school. Seriously. If you want to go to grad school, then go to grad school.
If that's the way that you're living, you're missing life. And this little thought about, is this all that life is? You rebuke that. But you know what? It could be God speaking to you, trying to stir you up and get you to rise up. Before you can ever see victory, before you will ever see the supernatural power of God manifest in your life, you've got to stir yourself up or you're going to sink to the bottom. And this is what's happened with most people, is that they look around and most people are afraid to get out of the boat.
So he's saying, you're wasting your life. Get, involved in my ministry and donate everything you have to it. I'm saying, don't waste your life doing things for Andrew Wommack or other televangelist nutterbutters. They will do nothing for you, okay? It's a waste of everything. Don't burn it up working for them when they're cynically taking advantage of you. I'm sorry, I cannot accept that Andrew Wommack is a good faith actor. I can't.
Everybody wants a testimony about walking on the water. And what a great miracle that is. Every one of you would love to have a great testimony, but you know what?
I prefer smoke on the water, personally.
Walk on the water, you got to get out of the boat. And the boat's sinking. There's no reason to be so attached to it. Amen. In the 14th chapter of the book of Matthew, the boat was going down. The boat was full of water. These people were about to drown, and they saw Jesus, and Peter said, "Come."
Well, you know what? Some people don't have the choice to, give up everything and throw themselves into something new, you know? Some people work at Lowe's or Home Depot and only have a total of 3 hours a day to themselves, right? Because they have to get up, get ready for work, and then work for 8 hours. And the commute is an hour long total, 30 minutes each way, plus the time they need to get ready, get up, drink coffee and stuff like that. That's another hour. That's 10 hours of their lives gone, plus another 8 hours gone to sleeping. It's 18 hours out of 24. Plus getting ready for bed and everything else. People don't have that much time to themselves. You know, they work their nuts off for almost nothing, and you're telling them to, give it all up and give it to your ministry. He won't settle for people giving, $25 a week or something, which, by the way, is 2 hours of their time in a lot of cases. That money that people give to his ministry, that came from somewhere. That represents 2 hours of their life they will never get back. 2 hours a week. They work 40 hours a week. Well, 2 of those hours now belong to Andrew Wommack. This is the most cynical, disgusting, depraved view on society, on people giving you what they have that I have ever heard, I think.
Or Jesus said, come. Peter said, if it's you, bid me come. And Jesus said, come. And you know what? Before he could walk on the water, he had to get out of the boat.
Well, some people don't have the luxury of just stepping out of the boat or just giving up on their job, saying, you know what? I'm just going to walk away from my job now and work for Andrew Wommack. Donate all of my time and money to him. Some people don't have that luxury. This guy that had, $1 million from a real estate company, he had that luxury. Almost nobody does. Maybe 1% of the country, of the United States, has that kind of a luxury. So I don't know what Andrew Wommack is looking for, but to be perfectly honest, whatever it is fucking disgusting what he's doing here to get it. Simply wrong.
Most people don't want to lose the security of the boat, but the boat's sinking. It's full of water. In case you hadn't noticed, did you know suicide is up like 200 or 300%?
Okay, I don't even know if that's true. You need to look every statistic up that he quotes.
People are sick and tired of living. They're miserable. And yet everybody wants to be the same.
Did you ever consider the possibility that maybe that's the direct result of the economic system that you keep propping up? I mean, I'm not saying that I want to go with socialism. I'm not saying I'm a communist or anything. I'm not a communist or a socialist. But we've got to have something better than this, right? Heavily regulated capitalism is what I'm in favor of. This guy is absolutely obsessed with imposing his beliefs and views and ideals on everybody around him and doing everything he can to continue the system that exists now, that is imposing itself on others.
The people who are committing suicide, the people who can't figure out which restroom to go into, the people that don't.
Oh, here we go. This is his anti-trans, rant. Listen to this again. Let's just step back, listen again.
They're miserable. And yet everybody wants to be the same as the people who are committing suicide, the people who can't figure out which restroom to go into, the people.
I don't even know what he means here.
People that don't know up from down. And we want to be like everybody else. Everybody else is miserable. I tell you what, this boat's going down unless Jesus intervenes, and I believe he is intervening through us. But you shouldn't.
Why are they clapping for that? That was just nonsense.
You shouldn't be so desirous to be like everybody else. Everybody else is not enjoying themselves.
That's correct, but there's no other choice. Like, what are people supposed to do here? What's the plan? How are people supposed to resolve this situation? They can't just stop working. They can't just give up on everything. They can't walk away from their entire lives. Like, what are you even talking about right now? I don't understand. He's saying that people should just straight up give up on their life or what? I don't understand.
You know, I'm not a perfect example, but God has revealed himself to me. I'm seeing awesome things happen. I get so excited, I can hardly stand it. I am so blessed that times, honestly, it's hard for me to contain myself.
Yeah, okay. He thinks he's blessed because he's filthy rich, and he thinks that he's filthy rich as a direct result of being or having a good relationship with God, basically. When in reality, he's just filthy rich because he takes advantage of people.
When you are in the center of God's will, there is a supernatural satisfaction that doesn't come to those who are just
Your mom's a supernatural satisfaction.
Playing it safe. And I commend you for coming out on a Thursday night. You're the fanatics.
And I guess that's something to be proud of. You're the fanatics. Okay, great.
But I dare to say the majority of you are playing it too safe. God's got something more for you than what you're experiencing, and you are just letting circumstances dictate and control you. You know, it's my experience, and every single person I know who God is using in a supernatural way and seeing things happen. I'm not talking about just ministers, but I'm talking about people who are prospering in business or in any area. They're people that get out of the boat. They take risk. They are motivated that God made them for something special. They aren't just a placeholder. They aren't just occupying space. They want it when they die that somebody will miss them instead of say, praise God, I can take over what they had.
Wow, that's interesting. That's an interesting way to frame it. They're hoping that somebody will miss them rather than being glad they can take over what they had.
God made us, every one of you, to be something special. Man, there's so many scriptures. I could spend a whole hour talking about how that God created you with the purpose. Jeremiah chapter 1, he told Jeremiah, before I formed you in the womb, before you came forth out of your mother's belly, I sanctified you and ordained you to be a prophet unto the nations. God doesn't look at you and when you're 20 or 30 years old, look at you and see what your talents are and think, oh, well, I could use this and I could use that. Did you know while you were still in your mother's womb, it says in Psalms 139, verse 13 in the NIV, I don't know that I can quote the NIV, but it says something about that all of my days were written in a book before one of them came to be.
Okay, I don't know if that's even true, but if it doesn't say it in the version that he believes is most accurate, then why would he quote another version? Either that's the intent that the authors had when it was written, or it wasn't the intent that they had, right? He should pick a version and stick to it, it seems to me. And aside from that, this is commonly the verse that Christians use to back up the idea that abortion is wrong because God, knew children before they were born and blah, blah, blah. When in reality, the Bible is actually in favor of abortion. I just want to put that on record. Numbers 5:11 to 30, I think, are the verses you want to look for if you want to read about it.
Did you know God had written in a book what every single day of your life was supposed to be? Now, He doesn't control you and make it come to pass. You got a total control. And I can say that most of us haven't seen God's will for our life come to pass. We're just taking the easiest path. We're taking the safest path so that we don't run any risk. We're so
This is honestly kind of wrong, what he's saying here, encouraging his audience to do risky things that could very easily ruin their lives forever.
Afraid of failure that we won't do anything. I'm talking about your neighbor. Not you. You can punch them and say, he's talking about you. You know, the Lord spoke to me January the 31st, 2002, and this
is going to be a prophecy, I bet.
This is after I had been in the ministry for 34 years. I'd seen people raised from the dead. I'd seen blind eyes open. I was seeing...
He says unironically, this is when I'd seen people raised from the dead. Really? He says this with a straight face. I've seen people raised from the dead. What'd they do with the death certificate then? Is there any evidence of this at all? I'll take anything.
Good things happen. It's not like nothing had happened. And yet the Lord spoke to me from Psalm 78:41 and said...
Okay, the book of Psalms should not be, in my opinion, shouldn't be taken as holy scripture. It was just the Jewish songbook. It was their hymnal. It was never meant to give prophecy or any of that stuff. It should not be read as holy scripture. It shouldn't even be in the Bible. Neither should the book of Revelation, but that's a story for another day.
That in their heart they turned back and tempted God and limited the Holy One of Israel, talking about the Israelites who came out of the land of Egypt. And He said, you're limiting me by your small thinking. And this was after 34 years in the ministry. And God told me I was limiting him. And I tell you what, I began to start thinking bigger. And since then, it is phenomenal what God has done. I'm not the
Oh, yeah, he's rich. That means everybody can be rich, if only they love God enough.
greatest example. I'm not the only example, but I can guarantee you there's more happening in my life than it ever would have happened if I hadn't have started believing God and stirring myself up. And it's the same thing for every one of you. There's not a person in here that has tapped God out. There's not a person in here that is doing so much that God is saying, Andrew, don't encourage him. Man, he's already so far out there, I'm not sure I can keep up with him. I'm not sure I can fulfill these dreams. There's not a single person in here that has challenged God.
I mean, the subtle undertones of this message are basically, if you love Jesus enough, you'll get rich, i.e., if you donate enough time and money to my ministry, you will get rich. God has made me rich. He will make you rich as well if only you donate enough to the ministry. I cannot believe I made that jump over those Bowsers. That was crazy.
I think it was Billy or somebody I just heard recently saying that if somehow or another you could believe big enough to challenge God, he'd just get bigger. Amen. You can't ever outdream God. God is huge, and we're sitting here looking for basically nothing, just doing things that might take a little bit of help, but we don't want to challenge God. It might overwhelm him. It might.
Wow, I have 200 viewers right now. That's crazy. Thank you guys so much for coming. I just want to mention something. I don't know what's happening with the Supreme Court case on Section 230 right now. I don't know what's going on with YouTube. I don't know what's happening with Twitch. I don't know what's happening with any of it. If you will please sign up for my newsletter or just my email account, please sign up to my email thing at telltaleatheist.com/subscribe. I would appreciate it very much. I'd feel a lot better if I had some connection to you guys. telltaleatheist.com/subscribe. Hey, from Feedy Owen. Sorry for random. I'm going through a lot, and I'm feeling the need to return to the church despite everything you've taught me about logic and reason. Does anyone have advice? I understand. I get it if that's what you want to do. Just be sure you don't fall for anything. Just make sure you don't believe anything on faith. Everything that you believe should be based on logic, reason, and evidence. That's all. As long as that's the case, I think we're good to go, in my opinion. I have no problem with church, honestly. I really don't. I'm really perfectly okay with people going to church or whatever. I kind of want to become a member of Prosperity Church and never give them any money, see how long it takes them to notice or say something. They use pressure techniques to try to force it out of you. Like, they will pass a plate around, or you're kind of pushed into giving because everybody around you is giving. And if you don't, everyone is going to notice. Or they will directly ask you for money. They'll come up to you and ask you for everything that you have in your wallet. And if you don't give it to them, it's obvious. Now, I wouldn't, certainly. I wouldn't give them a dime. But they put you in these awkward situations intentionally because kind of coerces you into giving money. And then they give talks like this about how if you don't give them money, then you're not pleasing God like a young boy should, that kind of thing. And again, welcome all the Twitch. Wow, it's down to 138. I guess me saying welcome Twitchers kind of killed interest in the thing, but okay. Welcome anyways, Twitchers who stayed. All right, let's keep listening.
Just doing things that might take a little bit of help, but we don't want to challenge God. It might overwhelm him. It might tax him. I'm dreaming big. We've got probably $1 billion building program that we're into, at least $500 million. And every once in a while, my staff will be stressed when I'm talking about some of these things, but I can guarantee you God is not saying, hold it, Andrew. I was in a service one time in
Again, this is a subtle way of kind of pushing his audience into giving him everything that they have.
The guy was talking like this about you need to believe big, and Jamie put her hand on my leg and says, sit down. Sometimes I terrify people with the way I'm dreaming, but you know what? You can't outdream God. You need to go to believing for something big. Rise up and do something.
As if it's that easy. That's the problem, Andrew. The United States economy has very much become the type of thing where you can't just do whatever you want. You can't just want to be an engineer or an architect or like a whatever, and then just like that, suddenly you are an architect or an engineer or whatever. Doesn't work that way anymore. There was a time when the American dream was a lot more attainable in the United States than it is now. The American dream isn't real. It's a piece of propaganda that was spread around to entice immigrants to come here. Seriously, there's the period of time when immigration was respected or at least desired, at the very least, by Americans. Matter of fact, honestly, immigration is massive in the United States, even now. I think the United States brings in like 1 million people per year, 1 million immigrants a year, right? And that's good. That's a good thing that we bring in so many immigrants. Immigration is good. It builds our economy. It makes it explode even more. I don't know why Trumpist nutcases have a problem with immigration, why they want to build a wall or whatever other nonsense. Immigration is actually a good thing for an economy, usually. But the point is, the American dream is not real, never was. It was far more attainable in other countries. Currently, right now, it's way more attainable in other countries. It's called upward mobility. The ability to start from nothing and build upon it until you have a respectable occupation that makes a good amount of money. I know that he's saying here, do something with your life. You think that people wouldn't be doing something with their lives if they had that option? Most people are incapable of, quote unquote, doing something with their lives. They have no choice. What do you do when you get out of high school? What's your first step if you don't, go to college or something? Your next step is work at Lowe's, work at McDonald's. What else is the plan? Like, what else are you going to do? There's nothing else to do. You have no other choices. There's no upward mobility. We're in a service-based economy where you can't move up easily. So this entire talk he's been giving has been about jumping out of the boat. Jump out of the boat. Do something uncomfortable. Take risks. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but at the end of the day, that doesn't actually achieve what people need it to achieve more often than not. Almost nobody will become successful by taking risks like that. The fact that I have a YouTube channel that allows me to, sit here and talk to people all day is astronomically uncommon. Holy shit, dude. Do you have any idea what the chances of my channel succeeding were? Almost zero. It was 0.00001% chance. It's like winning the fucking lottery that I was able to make a career out of doing a YouTube channel. That was not because of anything that I did. I was presented with opportunities, and I did the right things when I found myself in the position to do those right things. That's all there is to it. And that's pretty much all it is today for any occupation. If there's a job that paid a living wage available, it would be taken. People don't have the choice of going out and working a job that they want to work, that they enjoy doing, and that they make good money at. They don't have that choice. If they had it, they'd take it. This is something that Andrew Wommack obviously does not understand.
Amen. Look over here in 2 Kings.
This is probably something that Andrew Womack's audience doesn't understand either. You know why? A lot of them are retired and probably pretty wealthy. They have no idea what it's like to suffer. I'd be willing to bet that they skew older. Probably boomer generation, right? Mostly, by and large. And they lived during a time when it was so much easier to get a job that paid a living wage. the post-war boom, the dot-com bubble, like all this stuff that happened in their generation when they were adults and of working age generated so much fucking money for them. And here we are now with the American dream, the upward mobility quotient or whatever, as low as it has ever been. And wealth inequality, so completely off the charts. To my knowledge, it's never been this bad in the United States, wealth inequality. I could be wrong there. That's all I've got for you. If you like what I do and you want to see me continue to do it, check me out on Patreon. And let me know if you want to see more stuff like this in the comments. Okay, thanks for watching, guys.